Philomythia podcast.
Okay, little babies.
I'm not saying it this time. Hello, everybody.
Welcome.
No,
Welcome.
you son of a bitch.
Welcome. My name is Ian. Welcome.
Oh, well, hello, Eric.
Hello, Ian.
How are you today, man?
I'm still a bit hungover. I'm not going to lie. I know this is
Ooh.
the second time I've talked about this on the podcast, and everyone's going to think I'm an alcoholic. I'm like a slightly alcoholic. It's true.
He likes it. That's what we're saying.
I've got what were those little digital pets that you, back in the 90s?
Tamagotchis.
It's like I have a little baby Tamagotchi problem that could grow if I keep feeding it. But we'll see. But yeah, I drank, I didn't mean to, but I drank too much on Thanksgiving, and I'm still in recovery.
Right.
Oh God.
We played again the second session of my Forged campaign now that I'm in charge of DMing for Fridays right now.
Yes, we did.
And I loved it. Like I had a really good time with everybody. I felt good about it. Players seemed to feel good about it. I mean,
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. We're getting into it. A lot of it is like learning, like, okay, we're going to go to this world. Oh, the NPC that's like my grandma, she has a house there. So like learning about the connections we have and that kind of thing. But I feel like everybody's experienced enough that we're making pretty good choices. They may get us killed because
Right.
it's like end of the world type stuff, but we're doing good.
I think you guys are doing great. I think the problems that you're overcoming weren't necessarily problems that I created, but due to your relationships, you're finding that you want to do these things. I loved John and Jerry finding out who their parents were and how integral they were to River Run.
Right.
And I liked introducing some of those dynamics so people understood their relationship in the world and who they were and super fun for me. Super cool.
Let's be honest, though. It was really just John because Jerry was pretty much asleep at that point.
Yeah, Jerry's Fridays for Jerry. He's been showing up and he plays, but he's been fading
It's rough.
for him lately.
Well, plus, I mean, he lives on the East Coast,
Right.
essentially. He's in that Eastern time zone. So by the time it's 11 here, it's like 2, 3 in the morning where he's at. So he's like, guys, I'm dying right now.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
And he gets, when we start playing, it's 9:00 his time, which is rough. Like, I would love to go back to that hour before.
Ian killed it. I warned him.
Yeah, he did. I
I was like, if you do this,
totally fucked it. And after it happened, I was like, I can't even, like, this is unreal to me. I couldn't even believe how we basically gave everybody an extra hour to come and hang out if they want so we can do chatting. And then we start at this time. And now we show up later than normal and we chat again. And I'm like, Only reason I let it go on for so long was because, John's been sick. So
we had some friendship emergencies that we were getting updated on.
yeah, for sure.
So everyone is fine, luckily.
Yep.
That's good.
Crazy.
I think the thing that you didn't take into account is that 5:00 start time, even though nobody was showing up, everybody in their mind knew that they had to get there. So they were putting it off, making excuses like, oh, I got to do this. But then they would get on. So by 6, okay, we're playing.
Right. And I fucked up, man.
And then now it's just everything's an hour pushed.
Later.
Yeah.
Me and you are still on at the direct time that we always are on.
Oh, yeah.
Seriously, like, I could probably jump on before that because I'm just doing random shit.
I mean, hell, we could just play a whole other session for a different campaign.
Right.
If we wanted to. That's how much time we have.
I actually woke up with this idea because me and you are crazy, much more crazy than the rest. I was like, man, maybe me and Eric should just build each other a campaign. And then anytime we're just sitting there waiting, be like, hey, man, you want to play? And be like, sure, man. And we just DM that one person.
I'm totally down.
And like let them make a character to start with and just see where the world goes and experiment with some stuff.
I see your campaign world, and I'm going to raise you a mechanic system. I think we should do it as a Forged in the Dark rule set, but homebrew campaign world.
Oh, I was hoping you were going to say Numenera is what I was hoping.
Oh, we could do Numenera. That's more learning,
Right.
But yeah.
Well, that would be like us learning how to play Numenera a little bit.
I'm down for sure. Do you want to GM first or do you want to play first?
I say let's both over the next 2 weeks look through some of the books, and then next podcast recording we'll decide who DMs first.
Okay. Cool. Do we want to just do the Numenera, the Ninth World?
Yeah, let's just like get into it and see what it's like. And as soon as we're kind of comfortable, about as comfortable as we are in Blades, just comfortable enough, then we'll start like fucking around with some shit.
Okay. And for listeners who maybe this is the first time listening or you missed it, we've talked about Numenera briefly. It's another tabletop role-playing game with its own set of rules, made by a gentleman named Monty Cook. He's not the only guy, but he's kind of a D&D celebrity, if you will. He had a big hand in 3rd edition D&D and also 3.5. He is one of the co-creators of the Planescape campaign, which is like one of the best, most interesting, thought-provoking of all the campaign settings. It's not your normal like dumb fantasy. It's very morally ambiguous and you can do a lot of things. So Planescape's really awesome. We should maybe start breaking down different campaign worlds. So an episode would talk all about Dragonlance, all about Planescape, you know, all those kind of things. Doesn't have to be D&D specific, but that would be fun to do.
Yeah, just talk about worlds and Ooh, I love that idea. What do you guys think?
Yeah, what do you guys think? Don't have anything to say?
If you're watching this, the premiere of the YouTube video, and I know one of you might be, maybe two of you.
Maybe two.
You know who I'm talking to, Divine Panda.
Yep.
What do you think about that? Let us know.
Let us know, for sure. So Numenera is it's kind of like Blades in the sense that it is a rule set and it's also a campaign setting in one. And a lot of different rule sets seem to do really well with this. So Pathfinder, which is an offshoot of D&D, is the same thing. World of Darkness is the same thing, which is another rule set, which we should probably also talk about at some point because that's one I really want to play as well. And most listeners are probably unaware that they're familiar with World of Darkness because Vampire the Masquerade is one of the biggest games. It's probably right underneath D&D.
Yeah, for sure.
Like it's really, really big. So you've probably seen it out in the digital ether somewhere.
Right. Same with the werewolf game that was you may have known it too. They had card games back in the 90s.
Yeah, what was it called? Rage?
Rage was the werewolf one. There was one for the vampire side, but this was back when White Wolf owned the stuff.
Yeah, something happened with them. They went bankrupt or
and someone else bought that.
Something happened with the IP. Yeah.
They've been crazy successful with it.
I didn't know this until recently, but D&D fell out of favor. Like if you played that, you were lame, and storytelling, quote unquote, games were in vogue. So Vampire the Masquerade, these kind of games for all the 90s emo goth kids. That was the thing.
That's so funny.
Yeah. I remember seeing the books everywhere.
Me too. Oh, for sure.
Here's another act of dating myself, but I remember going to Media Play back in the day, and they had a huge section.
I loved Media Play, dude.
So did I.
It was such a cool place.
It was awesome.
Yeah, this was before, like, obviously we couldn't, like, go online to find out when albums were coming out.
No.
You either had to go to a local record store, and those were intimidating because they're kind of gate kept a little bit.
Kind of like nerd stores back in the day, too. Same thing.
Yeah.
Did you ever see High Fidelity, the movie?
Of course.
It reminds me of the people who work at the record store.
Right. Oh, yeah.
If you're friends with them, it's cool. But if you just come in and you're just a nice person and you're just looking for the thing that they hate, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah, exactly. So Media Play, you could go there and go to the music section and look up on their wall, and it would tell you a lot of albums that were coming out.
Releases. Yeah.
And that was, the thing back then. Like, sometimes I think in the back of metal magazines, you might be able to find some release dates for stuff coming out.
There were those kids who, like, they spent all their money on CDs and records. Records, let's be honest, records are cool now.
They weren't cool.
When I was, like, the 90s, they were not cool. No. They were super duper lame.
Yeah.
But they spent all their money on CDs, and they, you could subscribe to magazines and stuff, but you had to invest a lot of money and time.
Yeah, for sure.
To do it. So us being like poor high schoolers wasn't really in our wheelhouse.
Yeah.
But Media Play, I remember in the back with the RPGs, they had a bunch of books. So you'd find like these Art of Final Fantasy books, and like they had a cool book selection. They had like novelty items and toys and movies and music, the full full thing.
Well, it's almost like a lot of the smaller FYE shops to me kind of have replaced what Media Play was, and it's condensed down into just such a smaller place.
Much smaller space-wise, for sure.
Yeah, and they take your used stuff too. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I've gone to the used section and I've got a bunch of stuff. I'll talk about my sad story later in life. I want to talk more about these role-playing games. So, Pathfinder, just to go back to that, I remember hearing about Pathfinder. I've never even cracked the rule book on Pathfinder.
I love Pathfinder. Rule system aside, because it really is super crunchy. It's basically 3rd edition or 3.5 D&D evolved. So it's like, what if that stayed around and they developed the ideas of 3.5? So all the crazy mechanical crunch, that's where it lives.
Wow.
I think that's one of the reasons why 5th edition is so accessible, because it's not as crunchy, so people can pick it up.
Oh, for sure.
But Pathfinder, those books are beautiful. The design of the monsters, amazing.
Really?
Like, just the books themselves are works of art. Yeah, the design of the products is much better than D&D, in my opinion.
Cool. Because I see the books at my local store all the time, but I just don't know about them.
Crack up like the core rule book. They do the all-in-one, so it's an expensive book, but it's the player's handbook, the DMG, and the monster manual in one thing.
Oh, dang.
And then you have other books you can buy if you want more monsters, or you want the player's guide, so players want more options. So much more what we would think traditional D&D in terms of like you have a lot of books and rules bloat and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's really fun. Paul, he doesn't play as much these days, but he plays D&D with us. He and I started doing the campaign Rise of the Rune Lords before we knew anything about Roll20. This was back in 2016 winter, something like that.
Oh, okay.
But it was really fun. We didn't know what we were doing. Lots and lots of rules. And the cool thing about Pathfinder, they actually will sell these books of flat, like paper minis that are illustrated really good. And so you can, on a budget, you can really get started playing without having to buy tons and tons of stuff. So it's super cool.
Yeah, that's cool. If a bunch of people here locally, like people I know, wanted to like actually play, I'd go, okay, well, all of you chip in this much so I can get one of these board things that has the cutouts, and we'll do it. We'll have some fun in person, sure.
Yeah, the Pathfinder's definitely on my radar.
Nice.
Honestly, though, I probably play Starfinder first because it's the same mechanics, but space opera.
Oh yeah, I'm into that so much.
Like, it'd be so fun to do like they have books for this, and not exactly this, but a Mass Effect style of you have your ship and your crew and you have to go across this galaxy, like, you know, to different planets, and that would be really fun.
I think so too.
Yeah, Starfinder is the sci-fi version of Pathfinder. It's in the name. You're like, okay.
Right.
Good branding. But same thing, the Starfinder art, the design, it's just inspiring. It's nice to have around to like look through and be like, that is a great, what is that race?
Right.
Or the way the goblins look in Pathfinder, I love. And
well, what's interesting in Roll20, there's like, when you start a free account or a pro account, they give you a bunch of stuff just to have. And there's a bunch of Pathfinder stock things, but the handouts that they give you for the Pathfinder stuff, the art is really cool.
Yeah.
Like, it looks really cool.
Yeah. A lot of it is you transfer over because it's still pretty much D&D. You have the same normal stats, you have AC, but the CR, or the challenge ratings, way higher.
Oh.
So they'll get up into like 50 CR. And your hits, like I said, rules bloat. You start to get really, really powerful after a while.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
So it's like extreme D&D in every sense.
That's cool.
But the world is super cool. Pathfinder actually means something. So a lot of times the heroes are part of this Pathfinder society, which are explorers.
Oh.
So their point is to go out and explore and find out what's out in the world. And again, there might be people listening who know more than me because I haven't played tons. So that's a very broad sketch, but it's a really cool concept for sure. I like it.
It's cool. I like a lot of the tabletop role playing games that I've been discovering over the past little while. They've been really cool.
Yeah.
I like a lot of the dynamics. I like a lot of the mechanics. It's, again, with this, I love stories. I love telling stories. I love hearing stories. I'm into it.
Yeah.
Even though some people are like, oh, that's a crappy story, I'll look and go, yeah, it's pretty cool, man. I mean, that happens and that happens. That's a cool story.
The beautiful thing about RPGs is a lot of times if someone's like, that was crappy, you can really be like, well, it's probably the way they played it. Even we've dogged on Storm King's Thunder. We probably had a bad experience in some ways because of just the way it was played through, and we were kind of learning how to play through it too, you know?
Yeah, oh, for sure.
So Storm King's Thunder, for those who don't know, is one of the modules or one of the, what we call a campaign, but a long extended adventure in D&D. And this one took us like a year and a half, maybe.
It's like 16 or 15 months, yeah.
Yeah, it was, and that's pretty standard.
Yep.
If you're only meeting once a week on average, playing for 4 hours.
Funny enough, thinking about this now, and when we first started playing, when we were doing Phandelver, because that's what we started with to kind of learn how to play, was Lost Mines of Phandelver,
which is a small little starter adventure. It's one they recommend to start with a lot of the time.
Super small. I would recommend it too. You can have a lot of fun with it. There's a lot of fun things that you can do. And I remember one of the times we were doing like a side quest or basically meeting outside of the group. John's like, well, there's this side quest, but it's just role-playing stuff. You just go talk to him. You guys want to do that? And me and you were both like, no, that's dumb.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And now thinking back, I'm like, what a foolish move you made, Ian. That could have been really cool.
Right.
But we were so new. We just wanted battle and some one-liners to throw around.
Let's be honest. Let's reveal a little of our past here. Ian and I both went to basically a drama school or an acting school.
Yep.
So like role playing, I won't speak for him, but for me, I kind of have had an allergic reaction to, okay, this is just going to be pure role playing. You know, there's not going to be any fighting. That felt very uncomfortable to me. And then you start actually playing, and I discovered that the role playing parts were almost always my favorite parts. That's what I enjoyed the most. And I was like, well, that totally makes sense. I would never have thought that unless I actually played a bunch.
Oh, for sure. And that's how I'm very much in line with that. I think the bigger difference between us in just that sense is, I'm not really sure. Ha! There you go.
One thing too that did have Storm King's Thunder take longer is after a while, that's when Ian, every fourth Friday, we started doing the Forged campaign. And it was good. It was a good thing to do because the Storm King's Thunder started to lag a little bit. Everybody was kind of like, oh, we're in that middle. And it's just killing giants. That's everything.
We could have chose to not go kill all of them.
Right.
But when we were posed with the idea of that, it's like, well, yeah, let's go kill all of them. Duh. And then we get like 3 out of 7 down or something down. We're like, holy shit.
Our initial encounters, like the giants are always like eating people and like just ravaging the land. So we're like, fuck these guys. Like, let's take them out. And then you start eating the elephant. You're like, this is too much. It's too much. I can't finish.
Come on. I want it to be done.
Come on. And then we encountered a homebrew beholder god, and
that changed everything.
The rest is history.
The other thing I think is interesting is that I am not a fully functioning human being, and I start to say things and I lose them as I'm speaking.
I think that's both of us.
Okay, well,
it's become very apparent listening back to our recordings. I'm like, I could speak better. I should work on that.
That is, you just reminded me. So what's funny is listening to the episode we just aired, which we just aired episode 9, I believe, technically is what it's qualified as. And what's funny is we talk about it being episode 8 at the very beginning.
I know.
So funny.
We addressed that like 2 episodes ago too. We're like, we're not going to talk about what episode this is because we don't know.
But what's funny to me is listening to that recording, we're talking about Storm King's Thunder because we know that we're nearing the end.
We're still in it.
And then you'll obviously... audience, you'll know this by now because the other episode will have aired, but then there's the episode that comes out right after we finish it that's in the works right now. It's just a comedic thing to hear those episodes and go, oh, Storm Kings is done. That's funny.
Right. On a side note for that, I'm really interested to know if the listeners care about that. Do you care that there's a delay between episodes? Because it's like a month.
Like 4 weeks right now, yeah.
Something like that. Or do you want it to be like we record it and then release it the next week so it's a little more current? Because I'm happy to do that. We can just release what we have and get more current. Or if you even care. People might not care. I feel like for me as a listener, I would probably like it to be a little more current.
Yeah, well,
I'm interested to see what people think.
let's hear what the peeps have to say.
Listeners, Divine Panda, tell us what you think.
And what's your friend's name?
Of course, I'm blanking on his name right now.
I'm trying to think of his screen name, not his real name.
I think he uses his real name in there. I don't remember. I know we've shouted out to him before, but Sean. And then there's the third listener too, who you know.
Oh, Arvidas?
Yeah, he's cool.
And now Justin's a listener.
Yeah, what's up, Justin?
So yeah, as long as people keep listening, and it's just if there's only a few of you, we'll keep shouting you out. But if there gets to be too many, we'll try and figure something out.
If we get more people, listeners, that's a good problem. Yeah. But we'll find ways, like we'll remember our dedicated listeners.
Oh, for sure. You see,
we won't forget you.
We won't forget the people who've been here. Not at all.
We've been pretty upfront about we're figuring in what our format is all the time. So this podcast thing is going to keep changing and morphing. And also, I guess we should just start floating this now. We'll probably start releasing actual plays, maybe not every Wednesday to start with. I don't know if I have time to do it every Wednesday, but we'll start releasing. Wednesdays will be kind of our actual play day, and then Fridays will be our normal podcast day.
Who knows if the actual plays could range from anything that we've done actual play with, and we've just edited down for listeners because they seemed interested.
I'll probably put my Shadow of Ao homebrew campaign on there. That's got to be edited down because there's a lot of boring stuff. If Ian wants to throw out some of his forged stuff.
Yeah, I might edit down the elven part that we're in.
Cool.
Because I think it'll be fun. All of these will have very adult content. Very.
This is all explicit. I should probably make a thing on YouTube, but everywhere else, if you look at our podcast, there's the little E next to it because it's not.
Yeah, we say horrible things sometimes.
We're adults sometimes.
Yeah. But all of this talk of these different tabletop RPGs, role-playing games, it's got me thinking that, like, do you remember how we started that campaign world that we were building?
I do.
I think we should dust off the leathers.
Talk about it?
Talk about it. The leathers.
The leathers. I'm down. I actually came up with a name for the world.
Oh, nice. Let's hear it.
So Hylica, Hylic without the A, so same word without the A in the end means matter in Greek. And in Gnosticism, matter is usually seen as evil or corrupted. And so I thought it was a cool little, again, tip of the hat to that theme that we're kind of playing with.
Oh, I love it. Hylica.
Hylica, people. Kind of like Hyrule, but not really.
Yeah. I think it's got a thing to it. There's some to it.
It's a good ring.
I kind of remember what was like the basics of this world are about, but give us just like some bullet points, just real quick.
Okay. So we've got a cool premise, which is that magic corrupts. So like, for instance, if this was a screenplay or a book, that could be the theme of the story.
Right.
So using magic is a corrupting force. The characters are part of this organization. What do we call it? Like the Magisterium? Or...
Yeah, that's what we were calling it as a work in progress. Yeah.
Yeah. And they are new recruits going out in the world. Problem is, one of the deeper secrets is that the organization or the head of the organization is actually responsible for this corruption. And so the organization is actually at the higher levels, kind of conspiracy style. Ooh. They are the ones causing this corruption or keeping the problems in place. So that gives you a natural conflict for the PCs to deal with. And then we outlined the basic organization. The players will have some kind of object that allows them to cast spells and do other things that not everybody can do.
Right.
So it puts them in a kind of a special, no pun intended, class of people in this world. That's about where we stopped. Cool. I don't think we did any like world building in terms of weather or creatures, that kind of thing.
Sweet. Let's establish how large.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to pull up a map.
Are you getting Faerun?
Yeah.
All right.
Usually, if you play any of the D&D campaigns from 5th edition, you're usually on the Sword Coast somewhere, which is like the West Coast, essentially. So, and it goes from like the north and Icewind Dale, which is like it's like Antarctica, all the way down to the jungles of Cholt if you just keep going south. But I thought it'd be fun to say the part that got taken away is somewhere further inland.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I just found a map on Candlekeep Forum. placing the main kind of regional map of Faerun over the United States.
Oh, okay.
And showing you kind of a size comparison. So it's like 2/3 of the United States, kind of going from like the top of Mexico all the way to the bottom of Canada, or kind of the middle of Canada. So that's pretty cool.
I think the area that this should come through is a part of Damara all across the Moonsea, and have it follow kind of this little river that goes down, take a chunk of the Auroch Desert, and then cut down and take a bunch of those as well, and a Dragonmere, and a big chunk of the Sea of Fallen Stars.
Okay, the Sea of the Fallen Stars, that's the inland sea, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's cool. Ooh, if you did that, let's say kind of the center of the world is the Sea of Fallen Stars, just for argument's sake, you could almost take influence from like Greek civilization. The whole civilization's kind of seafaring, and like that's how people tend to get around.
You could, you could just say, just grab the middle. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and there are some weird islands and stuff that I think like wizards live on in the middle of the Sea of Fallen Stars.
And there's also the Pirate Isles are in the middle.
The Pirate Isles, that's awesome. Get some Cormyr in there, Cormanthir, Symbia.
Yeah, I'd say get a little bit of the Great Dale, a little bit of Thesk, like just a big chunk of all of these.
I love that. Because you never really hear about these places either.
Right. So you could take that huge chunk, and that's kind of where this demiurge or whatever has removed from that plane of existence, I guess. I don't know how you'd say it. Does that work?
Yeah. Well, and that's something that happens in the mythology Faerun, especially when they have wild magic plagues, as like pieces of the world will disappear. And there's a companion world to Faerun. I can't remember what it's called, but pieces of that world will pop into existence.
Oh, right.
So, and they've had like floating islands, and suddenly the Underdark will disappear, or a bunch of the world will fall into the Underdark, and all these kind of crazy things. So you could even, if you wanted to tie it into Faerunian history, you could say during the first spell plague, this area just disappeared.
Yeah.
And we don't really need to know what replaced it, because we went, our perspective for the story we're telling goes with the bubble that disappears. John Novick is the map creator. He spent a lot of time on this map. It's you can get high res hex maps. He's got political boundaries. He's got different versions, and it's really cheap on Patreon. I think it's like you can get all the maps for $1.
Oh, nice.
So I would definitely check him out. It's really well done. As far as just the detail, better than anything that Wizards has done, because most people aren't going to play in the center of Faerun.
Right.
Again, we're always on the Sword Coast, the western part of this continent. If you look at this continent of Faerun, because this isn't the whole thing either, this is like one of 3 continents. It's weird looking.
Yeah.
It's not like your typical thing. It almost looks like a base clef, like it kind of curls, or like a golden spiral.
I wish I could remember the name of the actual planet that Faerun is on.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's find out.
Yeah, let's discover it.
Planet.
Any rate, so I like that that's how big it is, and now we've also just kind of shifted things a bit so that this is now like a sea travel
Seafaring
campaign, because that's like the main way to get from this side to that side is gonna be the ocean, the boats, because going all the way around, it'll take too long.
Maybe you can't go all the way around.
Right.
That begs the question, okay, what are the boundaries in terms of, we know the general size, but is there like is it like glass, or is there just an invisible wall that you kind of run into at some point, or like a, Truman Show style, where you just reach the edge and it's like a brick wall or something.
You're like, what?
That's painted like a backdrop,
I would almost want to say, and I mean, obviously you weigh in on this, but it's not a hard barrier. It's almost like you could go up to it and touch it and nothing happens, but if you push into it, you'll go into it.
Yeah, you could.
It would be very, very thick, but you don't see that as you're looking through it.
Right.
You don't know that it's that thick, but going up into it is not good. Like walking through that barrier world is a bad place.
Do you remember reading the Alvin Maker books by Orson Scott Card?
I read the first one, yeah.
There's this thing specifically in the first one where Alvin's house, I can't remember, I think it's Alvin himself who's the main character, and he has, the magic is called knacks, so everybody has a knack or something kind of extra normal that they can do in this world. Mm-hmm. It might be something really weird or small, like they always, they make baskets and they make the best baskets. and it's got just a little bit of magic in there. But he keeps making, there's like an evil priest or preacher who's trying to go to Alvin's house, and then he'll just suddenly come to and realize that he's walking in the opposite direction.
Uh-oh.
And he can never get to Alvin's house. So it might be interesting if you start walking towards this wall, and then suddenly you find you're walking in the opposite direction. You don't know why.
Right.
Unless you have some way to block whatever the magic is that's...
Oh, I like that a lot.
And if you do, like you said, it's not good. Maybe it's like extra corrosive or something.
I keep imagining it, and this is, again, I'm stealing here from like Wizard's First Rule when they cross the barrier.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, it would take like a day to cross through it. So you'd have to camp in there at some point or just try and walk through. But it is a dangerous place to be.
Right. So it might even be like another plane is touching this area. Yeah, that's cool.
But I think...
Really quick, the name of the planet that Faerun is on is called Toril.
Toril, that's it.
Toril. And usually it's hyphenated with another name, which is Abir Toril. And I think Abir might be the other planet that sometimes show up. I could be wrong. Yeah. The subcontinent of Faerun, the planet Toril, more formally Aber or Abir Toril. I'm not sure how. It's Abeir. So I think it's Abir.
I don't know.
Yeah, the landmass of Faerun is approximately 9.5 million square miles.
What? It's huge.
Yeah, huge. That's a interesting little bubble.
Yeah. I think that makes it interesting. I like your idea too, though. Like, even just approaching it like that, you're like, all right, I'm going to walk through it.
Right.
And you're walking towards it. It'd be like you blinked and all of a sudden you're a mile in the other direction going the wrong way. And you're like, what the hell?
And you have no memory of like turning around.
Right.
You just suddenly kind of come to and you're like, wait, why am I heading east now? I was heading west.
Yeah.
What's going on?
I like that.
Yeah, that's cool. And then I would say there's some kind of pre-barrier, like 5-10 miles before you get to the bubble. Maybe there's guard posts, or maybe that's one of the things the Magisterium does is they kind of keep these borders, and there's some kind of story that, like, again, there's evil hordes or something on the other side.
Right, yeah.
Maybe if you're really close to the wall, you're a creature of corruption and it twists you or something.
Yeah, I like the idea of even stuff can escape from within the wall. That's the other thing with the Magisterium, is because the beings that come through, even though it's not often, those beings need to be destroyed with magic. So it needs to be people who are registered to do it.
Right.
Ergo, the Magisterium scouts, that they're kind of the all-in-one. They hunt down the evil magic things. They also root out the people using magic. It shouldn't be.
We talked about this a little bit before, but it'd be cool to, if we go with the idea that the head of the Magisterium is actually Elminster, that Elminster is doing the thing that's now canon with the new Fitzban's Treasury of Dragons, where he creates this situation, or he capitalizes on it because he starts being aware of his other selves, kind of like what are they called? The mythic dragons? Now the really crazy old dragons. It's now canon in D&D that they start linking up with all their parallel selves. And they kind of draw themselves into them, and they become this super extra dimensional being. That maybe that's what Elminster is doing. He's trying to do what the dragons do, and he's drawing his different selves into himself.
I like it. I think we should, when he does that, though, or however this is happening, we should do what they do with Fizbin and change his letters around so he has a different name.
Right. You don't know who he is.
Right.
But it'd be cool to plant that deep in the mythology so characters could discover it. You're not going to hand it to them. It's not important to the story. But it's a cool little Easter egg. Like, they could discover that.
Yeah.
And be like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I like that.
And it might be interesting that the whole reason why this place is still in place, because it's taking him like thousands of years or something to draw all of the parallel selves into one. And since he's not a dragon, maybe it's unnatural or something.
Absolutely unnatural.
So that's pretty cool. What about different kingdoms and governments and countries? Is it all is it North Korea? Is it all one place?
No, I would imagine, just because you have to cross the sea, I'd imagine that there are like
different territories.
Yeah, territories.
Yeah. For me, since the sea's there, I definitely would probably do some research into Greek history to get kind of an idea of how those societies worked, the seafaring societies in the Aegean Sea. And also maybe not the European side of Greece, but Greece's interaction with Persia and more of the Middle Eastern side of things, and the Persian Empire.
Nice.
To get just again a different flavor. So again, you're not copying Greek history and just pasting it onto the world, but the idea of how they traveled and the different cultures. You could have a Spartan-like society and Athenian-like culture and that kind of thing.
Right.
So might be interesting. That's cool. What about weather? I feel like the weather would be really fucked up.
I have been waiting for this weather thing because I had a cool idea, I thought.
Let's hear it.
That there's a storm that always seems to be raging. It's almost like a hurricane that just slowly moves. Like it's just one of those things that's always there.
Okay.
So it just moves around the world, and that makes the weather patterns just jacked all over the place.
I like that.
So it makes farming super hard.
So kind of a wandering storm instead of a wandering monster.
Yeah. And it's huge. It's a giant like hurricane type thing. So it makes farming anywhere. They have to develop new ways they have to cope with that.
Okay. So maybe they have to
Do indoor farming or something.
Indoor farming or subterranean farming, something like that.
Something, yeah.
It's interesting because all of these adaptations kind of lend themselves naturally to using magic. So it'd be interesting if, again, maybe the farmers have to rely on the magisterium to get their daily shit done. Like you have to have a registered inquisitor who does the magic for you, like gives you artificial light so your plants will grow if you're underground, or gives you some kind of force field to protect you from the storm or whatever it is.
I think it would kind of be different in each region depending on what they needed.
It could be, yeah.
And I wouldn't say that they had to like do it all the time through them. It was more like they had to get their permits and they had to get
your
these
permits,
licenses
yeah.
in order to use these things that are provided by the magisterium. But you need permits and things to actually utilize the usage of them.
So kind of like the idea, none of the listeners are going to know what we're talking about, so we'll break this down, but they have to register for like one use magic items.
Right, but it's more than one use. But yeah, exactly.
Maybe they have a lot of the magic items and, powerful stuff. They keep it under lock and key.
That could lend you to, black market situations where not only are people using magic to do magical things, but this guy's using the growing stuff to grow things illegally. He doesn't have a permit for any of that stuff.
And again, this is kind of changing our first little adventure, but that could be the first adventure for the players too. Is like, there's some bootleggers.
Right.
They're using the magic grow. Again, you gotta go.
There you go. You gotta go stop that shit.
It.
Yeah.
That's super cool. I like that a lot. That also, from the DM side, you could really dive into the culture and kind of the geopolitical situation too.
Right.
Because maybe there's countries that fight a lot.
Yeah. Oh, I think there would. There'd have to be. And there'd be pirates, obviously, throughout the...
Absolutely. On the seas.
Right.
So you could do a lot of swashbuckling, seafaring type flavor. I feel like, too, all the characters would have some basic sailing know-how unless they explain why they don't.
Right.
Because basically everybody has to sail. You probably know a few knots. You have your sea legs. Things like that, as part of the culture.
Yeah, and I mean, it'd be fun, like in every party or like in the party that wants to play in this campaign, make one of them a character that's never been on the ocean. It's never been out there.
Right.
So they've always been sheltered, like they were a paperwork person or a studying person, and then take them out in the world.
Subterranean farmer.
Right. And then take them out.
What are you doing on the boat right now?
Yeah.
Kind of like a fish out of water. No pun intended.
It lends a lot of interesting dynamics that could happen in this world around you, making it feel real as you're adventuring to try and, who knows what you're trying to do at first, but...
Yeah. I love the idea of giving it a Mediterranean flavor. Again, not just taking it whole cloth, but when the players play, you start playing in the world feels different. It doesn't feel like a high fantasy medieval European place. It feels like, oh man, those ships they don't look like normal tall ships.
Right, yeah.
And a lot of them have to row. They have the oars and they can ram each other and, take cues from that time period. One thing Jim Davis has talked about too, because again, he went to school as a historian.
Right.
Apparently that was one of the time periods he studied because he really likes these what did he call them? Crux points? I don't think that's right. But basically these points where cultures start to clash into one another. So like when you get Persia mixing with Greek culture and you get these weird influx and mixing of ideas, that's where a lot of the action tends to happen.
All right. So I'm going to jump back to the weather thing again.
Really quick, though. Really quick.
Yeah.
So for listeners who don't know, a one-use magic item is it's a device from Numenera where you can, as a DM, give your players really cool high-level things that only they get to use it once and then it's gone.
Yep.
That's why it's called the cipher system, because the ciphers are these little one-use things. It's a thing that is powerful that you can use, but it only has a limited use. It's not something you get and you can just...
It doesn't recharge. It doesn't...
Yeah.
It's done when it's done. But the weather thing I was saying, having a system like that, you could really wreak havoc with the weather then, because you know that the weather could like smash through a bunch of stuff and it won't affect too much of like their food production because they're kind of used to it.
Mm-hmm.
But an adventuring party out wandering in stormy weather or...
Oh, yeah. Go to donjon.com and they have a weather generator and you can do how often does magical weather happen? You can do, frequently.
Right.
So that's like what I did in the Shoah Oz campaign. I had suddenly the sky was what was called aberrant sky.
Oh, yeah.
And if you look at the sky, you can go mad for a period. And
yeah, that was cool.
yeah, I like that a lot. Random weather is going to be a hazard that they have to...
It's just part of it.
It's
part of the world.
And maybe it's things like they're out on the road and suddenly there's high winds, so everything is slow moving terrain. So just getting from A to B is not easy and those kind of things. So
yeah.
How would you think society would be structured? Would it be kind of like city-state, since we're kind of leaning into the Mediterranean idea where each bastion of civilization, there's probably a handful of really well-civilized areas like big cities or something. It feels like an opportunity to do something a little more interesting than just what you normally hear.
Like, yeah, what do you think? Yeah, let me hear.
I like the idea of mixing kind of different political structures. So you have the magisterium, which is kind of the Roman Catholic Church, but of magic.
Right.
It's not religious, but it still has to do with power. And of course, it seems like a no-brainer that magic would heavily influence political power. Maybe political leaders are not allowed to be magicians, like it's too much power or something, but it would affect the way people lead and the type of governments. But it'd be fun if you had kind of this really rigid hierarchical Big Brother type organization, and then kind of the rest is chaos. So you have this fiefdom over here, and they're only there to serve their interests. So you kind of like great houses, but on a city-state level. So that also gives you some cool faction play. And maybe the factions are identified with certain cities. And that's really, again, even though I keep saying not to do this, but I'm just borrowing from Greek history. Because like you were an Athenian because you were from Athens, and that was part of your identity. So there weren't really countries. It was more about the little bubbles of civilization that existed.
Yeah.
So something along those lines. I don't know about that specifically, but that would be interesting to me, where you have this geopolitical tension between this big calcified organization and then kind of all this chaos in the surrounding areas.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think that's cool. And I think kind of like how you're saying, have some of them, there's the bigger ones, but there's tons of like smaller ones too.
Yeah.
Even ones that you may not have even heard of because they're just small.
Right. You might have a name for them, or you might know there's something over there, but if the players don't go over there, you're not going to build it up. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need a name.
And also maybe there's certain status things that like you're awarded with certain things from the magisterium if your city gets big enough or you produce enough resources for them, or so there's incentive for cities to get bigger. And maybe that's intentional. Our big bad, he wants the cities to be in conflict with each other because it keeps them busy or something. That's the classic conspiracy thing in our world now, is like the powers that be want us to be in conflict, whether it's true or not. So that's it's good for tension.
Yeah, for sure.
Another question I had, I think we already answered this, but like, are magic items and spells and resources and magical creatures? So that was another thing. If magic is this corrupting thing, What about fucking unicorns and basilisks and chimeras and all these magical beasts? Like, are they also controlled? Are they kept in zoos maybe? Or do they just roam around the land and you have to go hunt them down? Because, again, they're probably somewhat corrupted too.
I'd say that last one. They're wandering around just in their places where you'd find them out in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
But again, magic can corrupt, or at least that's the story you're being told. So they're always hunting down these magical, mythical beasts and just killing them.
So they're just trying to keep the population at a manageable level, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, oh, chimera, corrupted creature came into this village on the borderlands and murdered a bunch of people. We got to go hunt it down.
Yeah.
It's got the taste for blood now. Or thinking about that though, is like, well, okay, why does magic corrupt? And I'm like, well, maybe it's because of this out of balance world that the big bad has created, and his selfishness, the fact that he's sacrificing all these people's lives and, hundreds if not thousands of years going by. And so that out of balanceness is what's creating this magical disease, for lack of a better term. So again, it ties into what the PCs are going to have to confront in some way.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm trying to think if we've missed any like big points just on world building. Like if there's anything that seems glaring that's not popping out.
Well, I mean, I feel like this is, even if we are missing some stuff, I think that's a good amount of stuff for a world.
Yeah. I kind of want to go away and build some basic kingdoms, like build the factions and get some of the politics and the weather and think about that, and then maybe reconvene down the line and talk about it.
Yeah, and then we'll chat about it on here, and you guys can hear what we land on.
Yeah, baby. So that's the next, that's the update for what we're now calling Hylica. Interested to hear your thoughts on it. The listeners might catch something we missed that was glaringly obvious too, like, hey, you guys didn't talk about this. And it's like, oh, yeah, it's true, we didn't. Oh, I know. There's one more thing. And I have a cool idea for this, but I'm interested to hear your opinion. How long has the bubble universe, how long has it been in place?
30 years. No, I'm just kidding.
That's
I wanted to use
short period of time.
I wanted to use 30 because of blades.
Nice.
I'm all about that, like, make the number huge so it's not even like fathomable by characters. So like 5,000 years.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. As something like a long span of time.
Right. So that,
especially to like let's say the old world mind, it just seems like unfathomably long.
Yeah.
Here's my twist, is that time is passing quicker in the bubble than outside of it. And so if they are able to break the spell, thousands of years have passed inside the bubble, but only like 100, only the length of the spell plague.
oh, I would even want to say that it was like 10 years or something.
Oh, you could do that.
Like
yeah.
something that just is like, for them to reappear and have aged thousands of years, that area is now thousands of years older, would be a trip.
And it's got totally maybe different creatures, and it's a totally different thing. Yeah.
The way that they're trading now, the way that everything will have shifted to accommodate this new world. And then all of a sudden, bam, you're back in Faerun the normal way it is. So all of these things that you're prepared for would almost be like, what the hell do you have a bunch of underground farms for?
Right. What is all this stuff? So there you go, guys. And ladies and theys and thems.
Right.
That's Hylica, the kingdom outside of time. Okay, so I think for our little wrap up here, we were going to continue about just kind of going through some basic things in D&D for those of you who aren't as educated and maybe are curious how some of the stuff works. So Ian and I thought maybe we would build a character. We're not going to do the whole thing today because it can be time consuming, but we'd start today.
Sweet.
So there are different ways you can build a character, but a common way is to roll your stats, or you can pick numbers too. There's a thing called an ability array where it has certain numbers and you can just plug those in to the stats. But I think Ian was feeling like rolling, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'll roll.
Yeah. So let's go through the stats that there are. We've done this before, but let's cover it before we start. So what are the different stats, Ian?
Strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma.
Yeah, baby. So we're going to do the traditional rolling method today, which is you roll 4d6, and you take away the lowest number that you rolled. So one of the dice usually will be the lowest, or it might be tied. Like you might roll 2 3s, and you take one of the 3s away, and then that you total the dice together, and then you see what you got. Are we just going to roll 6 stats and then assign them, like, so the first roll is strength, or are we just going to roll 6 and then assign them how we want?
I think let's have some fun with this, and let's just roll each one as it goes.
Okay.
And then at the end of it, based on what we have, pick like it's the race and its class based on those.
Yeah. So this is essentially the oldest of the old school ways of doing character building.
Yep.
Is that you just roll straight down, and then that informs you, depending upon what's a high stat, that will kind of suggest what class you should pick. So I'm going to grab some dice. We'll trade back and forth. Let me grab my dice really quick. All right, you want to go first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here we go. Rolling for strength, baby.
Rolling for strength.
I got a 5, a 5, a 6, and a 3.
Ooh, baby. So 16. So we take away the 3, and then the 5 plus 5 plus 6 gives us 16. So we got a 16 strength. That is starting off strong. I'm rolling for dexterity. Whew. Okay, 5, and then 3 3s. So it's going to be 9. Not great dexterity. Probably not a rogue.
Probably not.
Probably not. Depending upon what race we pick and the modifiers you get and that kind of thing.
Right. All right, I'm rolling con. Here we
Constitution. This determines how many hit points extra you get and how robust you are, how healthy.
I got a 3, a 4, a 6, and a 1. So
right,
13.
13. And again, the average roll, I think, with the way we're doing it's like an 11.
Yeah.
So if you're getting below that, that's to be expected. And if you get above that, like a 16 is really good.
Yeah, that's
for
awesome.
like just a roll. I've heard of stories where somebody wanted to roll for their stats and they got like all 18s. So every once in a while, something crazy will happen.
Yeah, or you'll get like 17, 16, 18,
or you might get all
17.
9s too. You could go that way.
Oof.
And I just rolled for intelligence.
Yep.
So let's see. Lowest is a 1. I got a 3, a 4, and a 6. So that is 10, I think. Nope, wait, that's wrong. 13.
13. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
13
So intelligence is pretty obvious, but that allows you, like, if you're doing research or if you're a wizard, you want high intelligence. That's what wizards use to cast spells. They use that stat. And everything you do is always tied to your stats in D&D. So somehow it always goes back to one of these 6 stats that we're rolling. It's kind of the core of your character.
Here we go for wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Lowest is a 2. I got a 2, a 4, a 4, and a 6. So 14.
Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, final wisdom is kind of a misnomer. It's kind of your intuition and also your awareness. So like if you're trying to be aware of the world around you, or if you're trying to look for traps or see if somebody's following you, use things like perception, which is tied to wisdom. Wisdom, that term confused me for a long time. Like, I don't get why. So last one, charisma. This is kind of your social stat. So how well, not necessarily how attractive you are, but how well you get along with others, how schmoozy you can be. So if you want to be a social character, or you're doing like political intrigue, or you want to be a spy, charisma is really important. Not rolling good today. Okay, lowest was 1, so 9. It's 2 9s for me. Are you writing these down, by the way?
Uh-huh.
That's good, because I wasn't. Okay, so read them off.
Well, we have a strength of 16,
Mm-hmm.
a dexterity of 9, a constitution of 13, an intelligence of 13, wisdom of 14, and a charisma of 9.
Well, it seems like if we're just going to go on the nose, picking some kind of strength-based character is our best bet if we really want to maximize. We could also, depending upon the race that you pick or the heritage, you could plug in some stat, because you get stat boosts, so you could go another way.
Yeah.
But it seems like strength, wisdom, and intelligence are kind of the 3 best.
I would almost say that you could roll this as a druid,
Yeah, yeah.
a fighter. Those would be some sort of druid or fighter.
Druid or
would be
fighter,
the,
yeah.
yeah.
So druids they're kind of like shamans. They can shapeshift into different animals depending upon your subclass, which is kind of, you can get more flavorful with the class. So there's like Circle of Stars druid, or there's champion fighters, or it's different things you can do and different abilities you get depending upon the subclass you get. Most people get a subclass at level 3. So if you start at level 1, you don't really have to worry about it for a little bit. I would say let's just go with fighter. That seems great.
Fighter, huh?
That's a nice, easy, especially for building on the podcast. That's an easy one.
That's why I wanted to do druid.
Oh, you want to do druid because it's easy?
No, because it would be something different.
Oh, we can do druid. That's fine. The next thing is we'll pick our race or heritage.
Ooh.
So let's just say today, because maybe we'll do this again and we'll go really unorthodox and we'll use the character building method we did with ancestry and culture.
Mm-hmm.
But today, let's just go straight out of like D&D with the racial bonuses that you get and that kind of thing. So if we're going fighter and we're talking about maximizing stats, and full disclosure, this is not how I build characters. I always go with the concept first. A lot of times I pick the ancestry or the race and build from there. But that's just me. Once you know how a character's built, you can really build it the way that makes sense to you. And we talked about min-maxers, where some people are just about the stats. They want, for instance, if 16 is their highest stat, they want to get that as close to 20 as possible, as soon as possible.
So we're doing druid. The instinct for me would be elf. Be like, let's pick elf.
You could. Do they get bonuses on wisdom?
Mm-hmm.
Depending upon the subclass, right?
It's the subrace, yeah.
Is it the wood elves?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, it's the wood elves is a constitution, I believe. It's the other ones.
So there's high and drow. I think those are the three.
I think the high gets the wisdom.
The high? Okay. High elf druid.
You could also go with like a furbolg would be a good choice.
Yeah,
they get a
furbolg. Let's say standard races. We'll just say like PHB races.
Cool, then I'd say elf for sure.
Okay. So elf's classic choice. They tend to, this is really, you don't see this at all anymore, but a lot of the races used to have negative modifiers. So if they got like a +2 to their wisdom, they might get usually elves were thought not to be very healthy for whatever reason. So they would get a - to constitution. So they were thought to be a little more slight, or frail is probably not the right word. But that's cool. So what are the bonuses? You get 2 to wisdom and 1 to dexterity.
I'm actually pulling it up just so we know for sure.
Okay. Because you get something for the base race, but again, there's sub races.
It's +2 to dex for the standard elf.
Okay. And then +1 to wisdom.
Yeah, I'm just making sure on it.
Okay. It's usually a +2 and then a +1.
It is the wood elf gets +1 to wisdom.
Okay. That makes sense because they're supposed to be like the forest dwellers. I'm guessing the high elf probably gets intelligence of some
That's
kind.
correct.
Yeah. Natural wizards, baby. So every class is kind of built around one stat. So druids, clerics, paladins, all are built around wisdom.
I think paladin's built around charisma.
Oh, did they change it to charisma? I think you're right.
Mm-hmm. I think they have some stuff that hits some wisdom things,
right?
But it's mostly charisma.
It's mostly charisma. So it's druids and clerics, and I want to say there's one more, but I don't remember anymore. I feel like sorcerers should be wisdom based myself.
Yeah.
If it's supposed to be intuitive
charisma
and natural. It's like that makes more sense than charisma, which I feel like a lot of sorcerers probably wouldn't be very charismatic because they're so weird. But that's just me. So wisdom, again, is kind of intuition, using your inner knowledge, whatever you want to say. Clerics are kind of the priests. It's the priestly class. They use holy or divine magic. It's not necessarily good magic, depending upon what kind of cleric you build.
Right.
But they're like a religious type character. They worship some kind of deity. Now you have kind of atheist clerics where they can worship themselves or believe in themselves and get power. That is something you see. I don't know if it's official, but you do see it.
It's not. I mean, just gonna eat my own words right there.
It might be, though. You're seeing more and more, if something is really popular, Wizards is really good at listening to what the players want more of and putting that in there. So we might see an Unearthed Arcana of that, which Unearthed Arcana, again, is the public play testing of the new stuff that's coming out. So let's just say we're going to start at level 3, and this will be the last thing we do. but let's give them a subclass.
Oh, I want to say my gut is the fire one.
Fire one. What's the fire one?
If we're doing PHB, standard subclass.
Let's just do standard so it's easier to, if people want to look them up.
Then Circle of the Moon.
Circle of the Moon. Now, Ian has played druids. I haven't played a druid yet, so why don't you tell us a little bit about what Circle of the Moon, what's the flavor of it?
They're much more shape-shifty. They're the ones that they're the ones that get their you're allowed to do your shape change as a bonus action.
Okay.
Which allows so you can do other things with it. You also get more wild shapes.
Okay. Nice.
Your wild shape can become more powerful. Again, I'm just quoting things off the top of my head. I'm not super knowledgeable about them.
And for those who aren't sure what we're saying, wild shape is basically the druid's ability to shapeshift, which is really kind of the class feature. That's the thing that it does that nobody else does. Like, there are certain spells that allow you, like polymorph, a wizard can cast and change somebody, but druids have spells, but it's really the shape shifting that is the kind of unique flavor. Although, like, Ian's druid didn't necessarily shapeshift a lot, but he could deal out a lot of damage on his spells and that kind of thing, so you don't have to.
Luthien had his shape change. His wild shape was the starry form.
Oh, that's right.
So you can...
Which was quite different.
Yeah, in D&D 5e now, with it being canon, it's just one of your wild shapes that, not for the other ones, but for him,
right.
She, Luthien, could have still done normal wild shape and turned into animals.
Gotcha.
But he utilizes this starry form that's unique to them.
I don't think you ever turned into an animal. I don't remember you ever doing that.
I didn't, never.
Yeah, you did the starry form a ton, though.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Yeah. It's almost hard to call it wild shape because usually wild shapes are like animals of some kind.
Right.
And this was like you turn into like this extra planar starry creature that's all crazy. You can't really hit it. It's got all these advantages.
Yeah, at a certain level, you become incorporeal.
Yeah.
So slashing and bludgeoning and piercing, you're resistant.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's cool. I think that's a good place to stop for now. Let's name it, because we'll come back and we'll build more on the character too. Let's give it a name.
Lunar.
All right, that's on the nose right there. There you go.
Yeah, my names usually are.
There you go, listeners. I think we're done. I think that's a good place to stop. Let us know what you think. Again, we're always interested in your ideas or your character builds or that kind of thing.
Anything.
I think at some point we'll try to get a little more into how Ian and I actually build our characters, because we have totally different ways of doing it, and it's not necessarily the standard way. That's just, if you've never built a character, that's a great way to start. You'll get a solid character.
I'm a bad kid, and I fuck with the stats.
Ian cheats.
I mean, some may consider it cheating, but I'll take away points from other things and add them to other. So sometimes I end up with a stat that's like a -2 on some of my shit.
I'll look at your sheet sometimes and be like, why the fuck is the stat so high? Like, why is modifier so high? What's going on here?
Yeah. I'm a min-maxer on Conan.
And like I said, I always go for the concept. So for instance, my favorite character, Switch, I really like the idea of half orc, half drow type character and the things that they would have to deal with in Faerun being that character. We didn't get into it because it wasn't that kind of campaign, but orcs and drows are not looked on favorably a lot of the time.
It's looked on negatively.
Yeah, very negatively.
Almost exclusively.
I thought it would be very interesting to play a character who was already adventurous and tough and had to deal with that in their life.
Right.
That's where I started, instead of like, I'm going to do stats. I don't really think about stats first. That's just me, though.
I love thinking of starting a character the way Eric's talking about. And that's how a lot of my characters that have become who they are playing now in my Forged campaign are characters that I created they were characters, they were people, and then I fit them into a class, and we'll talk more about it.
Yeah, for sure. No wrong way to do it, as long as it works for your table,
Yeah. So listeners, stay sweaty, baby.
Force damage rules. Oh, hey, listeners, you've made it to the end. Give yourself a prize. Maybe a little cupcake pour some coffee or hot chocolate, you know. This is the credits, and we have links to all the things. So check down below, and you'll see things to the link tree, and the link tree links to the other links, and there's links to be had. Also, Jerry did our music. It's super badass. If you want to check out all his stuff, we have a link to that too. It's on SoundCloud. So remember to roll high and take a point of inspiration.
Like, share, subscribe.